Today, we are going to talk about finding fault. And I started off by kind of contemplating where this stems from, realizing that that's actually how we're taught to deal with disagreements. If you're not someone who is actively looking at their own behaviors, who is seeking to understand themselves, grow, this is normal. This is what you would typically do is you would look at a situation, one person would assign fault to the other person would then either accept it or reject it. It's common. I mean, I see it all the time with kids. You know, a kid accidentally hits another kid and the parents like, go apologize, even though there was no ill intent. And it's not a judgment on parents. This is just the normal way that we're taught to look at things. And then what happens is that you start to look at yourself and the reasons why you do things. It's easy then to start finding faults within yourself. Even if you don't do shadow work, if you are someone who, no matter what happens in a situation, you find a way to blame yourself for it and you make yourself responsible for the actions of people around you, this is a wound that I would pay special attention to. Conversely, you might be on the side of it. You might be someone who has a lot of disagreements and tension in relationships, but you find that you're never wrong. And that is also an indicator, if you're on the other side of things, to give that another look. And usually a term that we might use for this might be an empath and a narcissist. And there's this like kind of twisted, dark, cosmic joke that these people find each other and decide to play out this twisted, dark dance together. So if after watching the video, this is something that you realize that you struggle with, I have an exercise at the end of the video for EFT. I've taken a certification on it and I don't know what it is about it, but it's really potent and really powerful. That is what the soul wanted to learn. That is, even if you look at it from a secular lens, there's a reason that you are attracting somebody who is quick to tell you your faults when you look at yourself and realize that you're quick to accept other people's interpretations of your intentions and your motivations and who you are as a person. As kids, we take on a lot of times the faults of our upbringing. So if our parents abandon, neglect, abuse, or if they, split up, then it's really common for kids to feel like they were at fault for that. Of course, from an adult logical lens, there's not one person who would say, yes, it's the 4-year-old's fault. I mean, for sure, this was something that I was blind to. I didn't know that I had this wound because I was of that belief of like, quite logically, I could not have been at fault for the things that happened to me in childhood. So for me, I actually discovered that this was a wound that I had, even though it was subconscious for me. It was the day that my niece was born. So my niece was born on a full moon in Pisces. I remember clearly. This would have been in 2021. I was already well into my healing journey. I would have called it a mental health journey at that point. I wouldn't have considered it yet super spiritual. I was sort of like dipping my toes into astrology, so I knew that it was a full moon in Pisces. And so I used to watch a lot of like Med Circle, Dr. Ramani, who is the leading expert in narcissistic abuse, because it was narcissistic abuse that led me to start doing this kind of work. I'd had a very tense day, and what I'm noticing now as I share these stories is that a lot of my breakthroughs are these kind of dramatic moments where I'm like at peak emotional overwhelm. That is not to say that yours will look the same way. It could be totally different for you. Maybe for you, your breakthroughs are quiet and more of a profound, deep thing. Maybe you get emotional and you cry. It can look so many different ways. Just because this is how it happened for me doesn't mean for you. But this is the moment that I became conscious that I had been holding self-blame. There's really not anything logical that led me to it. I just know that this day I had returned back to work. I had to take a leave because of my immigration status. So I had gone back to work, and that had some anxiety and its own work issues that I was dealing with. That same day, my niece was born, so I was in the hospital with my sister, and that was, of course, a beautiful moment, but it was also emotionally charged because it's like you're witnessing life being born into the world. The baby was born, everything was good. I was driving home, and I just had like almost like emotional adrenaline, overwhelmed, and I decided to pull over at a park on the way home, and I see the moon. I get out and I'm looking at the moon, and out of nowhere, don't know where it came from because this wasn't something that I was consciously aware of, I yelled, "It wasn't my fault," in this suburban neighborhood. And I think I yelled it a couple times. And then I got back in the car and drove home. And then I get home and I see my cats, and I was just like overcome with so much love for them. And it was like a level of love that I hadn't like accessed yet. It felt kind of like in The Grinch when his heart grew 10 sizes that day. That's how it felt, like my heart grew 10 sizes, because all of a sudden I am just like weeping from how much I love them. And then just gratitude. All of a sudden I felt so grateful for like everything that had happened to my life because I had accessed that level of love. This theme actually came back up again for me later on in my journey. So now time has passed and I'm definitely more into the spiritual world. Now I'm looking at chakras and I'm really interested in Metatron at this point. So this would have been 2023. And I started to learn about law of attraction. I had already come across it before earlier, but me personally, I had not let myself learn or start trying that because I felt like I needed to do the hard psychological labor first before I could let myself wish for good things in the world. And this is not the truth. That was just the way that I saw things. Like I felt like I had to earn my way up to playing with law of attraction because it didn't feel right for me to start there. And that's not something that anyone needs to adopt. You can absolutely ask for whatever you want whenever. Now I'm learning about law of attraction and I come across this belief that everything that is in your life, whatever your scenarios are coming from the inside out. Reality is this like mirror of your belief system. And this is when self-blame came back up, because anytime that there was something less than desirable, it's easy to take this belief and sort of corrupt it. You can use this to disempower yourself and drive you further away from your inner union, because then you're like, what did I do now? This is my belief system. I believe that certain things have been agreed upon to happen regardless of your belief system for whatever reason. And a good example of why I believe this is actually Eckhart Tolle. So Eckhart Tolle, a few years ago, he got cancer. And this is someone who has mastered the self. And so his cancer, if it were based solely off of law of attraction, it would be that his own inner attack maybe that's a possible interpretation, manifested the cancer. But this is a being who is always in equanimity. You know, it lives in a perpetual state of Zen. And so him getting cancer to me was like, you know what, sometimes things just happen. Maybe it was a pre-birth agreement. I will recommend a book on that. It's called The Soul's Plan by Robert Schwartz. I'm reading the second one, which I believe is called The Soul's Gift. I don't recommend that you start with The Soul's Gift. That one is heavy. If you are wanting to be honest with yourself and have self-reflection, but you also don't want to beat yourself up, and you don't want to fall into this ego trap of further turning against yourself in a form of self-abandonment when you're hard on yourself for the fact that maybe something did happen, and maybe it's true. Maybe it is your belief system. Maybe you have a self-worth wound that is causing these terrible people to show up and highlight it for you. Maybe it's true, but then what do you do so that you're not continuing to kind of hurt yourself in the process? How do you know a belief if it's subconscious? So The first thing is to look for the signs, and some of the things that I already talked about. So are you someone that there's a disagreement and right away you're scanning yourself for faults, and you hold yourself to a very high moral standard, but at the same time you extend grace to everybody else around you, and you are not holding them to that same standard? Conversely, are you giving yourself grace too? Because if you're not, then this is a good indicator that this may be one of your wounds. Are you finding yourself in repetitive situations where there are people who are telling you about yourself, telling you about your intentions, labeling you as this, that, you're this kind of person, you're this? If you find that those are the kind of people that surround you, it may be that you're attracting them because you are someone who is more willing to take that on. Another indicator is if you currently identify with the empath narcissist label. If you're a Dr. Ramani watcher, maybe this could be something to consider. These are some of the indicators that this may be one of your wounds. And again, there is a healthy amount of self-inquiry and a humility that is super important. And what ends up happening is that when you start being brutally honest with yourself, and even though it's like you're ripping a band-aid off and it's like it stings a little bit to see these truths about yourself, but then the relief and the reward of kind of living more free and unburdened, it kind of is can form a little bit of an addiction to that. And so you're like on high alert of like, woo, what's next? Like, where else am I messed up? You want to find it because then you can heal it, right? But then that could lead you to, again, falling into the trap of taking blame on that you don't need to be. It is an excellent practice to use your external circumstances as a gauge for your belief system. Every situation is different. And like I mentioned, if someone like Eckhart gets cancer, I don't think that we can always know that it's a one-to-one correlation of like, my car broke down and it's because I believe that nothing works in this world. Maybe it could just be that it's an old car. Maybe the lesson is something a lot simpler, like, hey, you just have to remember to tend to your oil. And it's not this like big self-shaming thing. But of course, like the greater the challenge, the greater the blame. So like maybe it's easy to let go of the car thing, but if it's like you're in this huge tension with your spouse, that might be a little bit harder to just kind of shrug off. Is a great indicator is that if it's leading you to more self-love and self-compassion, then you're on the right track. That's the right approach. Now I would like to read a Sekhmet channeling. So I don't know what I asked about because I didn't write the question, but this is her response, and it's so perfect for today's topic. She says, to get through this, you will need courage. Becoming frustrated by your feelings, your pace, your circumstance is resistance, which just makes this grow, adding to the hardship. Acknowledge what is, invite the feeling in fully, show yourself to me completely. And that was in quotes. So she's telling me to tell this to my feelings. Show yourself to me completely. I will love you through it. Show me how deeply you hurt, how negative your thoughts are, how hopeless you are. Show me, dear heart, the same complaint you have of feeling emotionally neglected by your mother is the pattern you are playing out to yourself. So first, do to yourself what you requested of her. Check in with yourself. Care about how you feel. Advocate for yourself. Do not abandon yourself. Do not criticize yourself. Do not judge yourself. Provide yourself unconditional love and full understanding. As you practice this, it shows up around you and quickly. If you encounter negativity outside of you, going within to punish yourself will not help. Instead, hold compassion, acknowledge it. This is a very deep hurt. The deeper the hurt, the more bravely you love. How do I really feel? What do I really need? How can I love myself in this moment? How can I be gentle with myself now? However long it takes you, I'm here for you. There is no hurt too deep that will make me turn away from you. It's like Sekhmet is saying this to me, but it's me saying it to myself, because there's that relationship with yourself. And when it's a form of self-abandonment. And there were so many things in there that I want to make a separate video on, like relationship with your mom, the mother wound, that deserves its own video. Self-abandonment in the covert ways, its own video. So there's more coming. Before we conclude, I'm going to do an EFT tapping session with you guys live. And this is my own journal of limiting beliefs. So this is a real one that we're going to do live. So the way that I was taught to do it was to pick a limiting belief. If so far everything we've talked about, if you're like, yep, this makes sense, I feel like I do have an over accountability issue, then that might be the one that you write about. Essentially, you're tapping on these points of your body that are based off of ancient Chinese medicine, and they're acupressure points. So tapping these while saying these limiting beliefs and then releasing them, it works really, really, really well. It's one of probably the top things that I've done that is like free and easy and amazing. The other one is the daily practice, the Crappy Childhood Fairy, and it's essentially the same thing. And I think what it is that you claim, there's something about claiming your BS that is so powerful. And second of all, as you go and you're tapping, you're describing what you're feeling, and you're like conjuring the feeling up. And that it's a good thing, because then you can release it, because you don't feel like you're not going to let it go. The only way out is through. So I think that that's what makes this so powerful, is that it's a way to manufacture those feelings. Okay, so now we're going to do the EFT, the emotional freedom technique or tapping. And I'm actually going to keep it on theme to the same topics that we've been discussing. That way you can follow along. It is more impactful if, as we're tapping, you're saying the emotions that come up for you, because then, that way you can clear. It's just more powerful. But this will be fine. This is good, for example, and then you at home, you can say your own statements or use the ones that I give. So we're going to start with a karate chop point, and this is to set the setup statement. So the setup statement will be something like, even though I take on a lot of responsibility and I always find faults in myself, I still deeply love and respect myself. Even though I know that I take too much responsibility, I still deeply love and accept myself. Even though I'm so hard on myself and can be so critical, I love and respect and hold myself with compassion. Then we're gonna go right up here and keep going with like kind of how this feels. Those are all phrases to keep bubbling this emotion up. I'm always finding fault in myself. I hold myself to, outside of eyes, impossible standards. Under eye, I blame myself for everything. No matter what, it feels like it's always my fault. And other people tell me that too. It's always my fault. But sometimes it's exhausting, and I feel like I carry so much blame. So it was upper lip, chin, and now we're doing collarbone. And then under the arm, I can never get it right. I have the best of intentions and I still can't get it right. And top of the head. It weighs me down. This weighs me down. Okay, so next we're gonna go with like starting to separate those beliefs. So this is kind of the transition phase, and you can say like, maybe it's not true that it's always my fault. I have been so hard on myself. Maybe there's a more balanced way to look at this. It's just that I've carried so much blame for so long. But I'm open to the idea that I can soften, that I can be on my own side for once. Maybe I don't have to accept everything everyone puts on me. And I'm choosing to release this heavy self-judgment. I'm ready to take a more compassionate approach. Okay, and then we're gonna finish it off with like totally positive statements that totally counter the original limiting belief. So, you know, it's possible to be accountable and also not be cruel to myself. I am learning to find balance. And I'm allowed to be human, just like everybody else. I can extend the same grace that I do to others. I am safe letting go of harsh self-blame. And I trust myself. And I deeply love and accept myself. I'm so proud of me, of my efforts. I'm so proud of the morals that I have. It's just, it doesn't have to be so harsh on me. I can find balance. I can find the middle way. And I love and accept myself. Okay. So that would be kind of an example of what to do. And when I learned, I was told to do it every single day. That's not something I ever actually upheld. It was just a little too rigid for me. But anytime that this was a relevant issue in my life, I do the tapping. And you're probably going to want to do it more often anyway, because it is really effective. Okay, that's all that I have. I hope that this was helpful, that this is something that is able to help you cultivate and foster more love in your life.